Is the lighting still bad in here? Oh, much better. There we go. Hey, Sabrina, how's it going? Howdy, friends. Alrighty. Hope this is some good lighting. You can see Mr. Smith's Panthers he likes in the background, but we're going to give it another minute or so. It looks like I got 9 friends in here, which is awesome. I'm hopeful we get a bunch of us coming in today. Alrighty. While we're waiting for those friends, Emiliano, Diego, yee, let's go. I like it. How's it going, friends? Alrighty, so today we're going to be reading a little bit more of our friend Dog Days. Dog Days of the West. We're going to be starting on today. We left off on chapter 5. Now, who we got? We got some friends in here. Yeah, there's lyrics back. We're good to go. So when we last left off, our friend Wishbone, because remember, our friend Wishbone, he has 2 personalities. There's Wishbone as the normal dog, Jack Russell Terrier that he is. But then there's Longbill, his kind of alternate personality where he's in the Wild West and he has all these abilities to do things he can't do as a normal dog, right? So we just finished with him, going with Wanda Molina for this interview, right? And they were about ready to get interviewed by this McCain guy, Mitch McCain. And there's still a lot of questions about whether or not he's a good guy, whether he's got some alternate motives about why he's interviewing Wanda and that stuff. But now we're kind of shifting right back to Old West. Chaparosa is the name of the city they're at. And last we left off, our friend Longbill had a conversation with the sheriff about this gentleman Calliope, who's a bit of a rough fellow who was seen kicking a dog and not apologizing. So he's probably the antagonist of our story or the bad guy in our story. So we're going to pay attention to what he does going forward. So as I'm reading, you're just listening, following along, but I will be stopping and I will be asking you guys a couple questions. So first thing I will be doing is I'll be coming across some rather tough spelling words, some words that are tough to spell, and I will stop. I will say that word again, and I'll ask the chat if you guys know how to spell the word to go ahead and type it in the chat below, because there are some tricky words in here that I was like, wait, how do you spell that? So I'll make sure I'll shout out on those ones, so that way you guys know how to spell some of these tricky words. I also have some. Do we need a paper? You do not need paper for this, Emiliano. You just need to be able to pay attention because I have some questions for you. So as you can see, we're going to be reading 2 chapters today. As I hit myself in the face, we got chapter 5 and we got chapter 6 down here. So we have 3 questions for chapter 5 and 3 questions for chapter 6. Now I'll read the chapter 6 questions before we start chapter 6, but I'm going to go and read these chapter 5 questions now. Hey, is that my friend Jada? Glad you're in here. Welcome, hon. So these are going to be the questions we're looking for as we're reading. So as Mr. Smith's reading, if you see or hear, you're not going to see it, you're going to hear the answer to one of these questions, go ahead and type in the number. So for instance, as I'm reading and you see the answer to number 1, just type in a 1 in the chat. That lets me know you see the answer. I'll stop and I'll ask you what the answer is. So let's go and read what the questions are first before we start reading chapter 5. So our first question is, what simile does Longbill, remember that's Wishbone's name in this kind of alternate reality, what simile does Longbill use to describe how Tom looks when he gets to Mames? So remember, our friends, similes are how we're comparing 2 things using the words like or the words as. Those 2 words are going to be the big clues that we're using a simile. So listen out for those words when we're describing how Tom looks when he goes in the Mames. And remember, he's kind of got a crush on her, so they might have something to do with that. Number 2. Who walks into Mames that makes Longbill's hair stand up? So usually when dogs have their hair stand up, it's not a good sign. So we'll be paying attention for when that happens. Oh, welcome to the show, Sean Smith. Nice. Good to see you there. Number 3. What is Mames' response to Calliope? So Mr. Smith didn't put a question mark there. Shame on him. and his pen's not near him. But imagine there's a nice question mark there. What is Mame's response to Calliope? So Calliope ends up talking to Mame. She has a very stern response for him. We're going to make sure we pay attention for that. So as we are reading, go ahead. You're going to find out who Calliope is, Evan. Don't you worry. Just pay attention to the story, and we'll answer those 3 questions as we go along. All right, here we go. Chapter 5. Long Bill dodged a tumbleweed rolling down the street and trotted toward the sound of the piano music. It was coming from Mame Dugan's restaurant. Mame's was the most popular place to eat in Chaparosa. If any place could be called the center of town, it was Mame's, and Long Bill made sure he never missed a meal. Long Bill climbed the steps to the boardwalk, then walked under the swinging doors that led into the restaurant. He stopped and sniffed. That smells coming from that kitchen are enough to set my black nose a-twitching. He looked toward the corner to the chalkboard Mame set on an easel. He tried to read the list of today's specials written on the board, but there were too many cowboys in the way. Just like every other day at noon, the restaurant was packed with dusty cowboys who'd put their work down and picked up a fork instead. Howdy, Bill. The men all turned to Bill and called in unison. Howdy, everyone, Long Bill replied. He looked from table to table as the men stuffed their mouths full. Sure as shooting, these cowboys had the worst table manners west of the Mississippi. Hey, Daryl, I'm glad you're in here. Okay, Long Bill thought. So most of them are using silverware, but they chew with their mouths open, and they get food caked to their whiskers. They also slurp, pick their teeth with their fork, and burp louder than a longhorn moose. Long Bill wagged his tail. In other words, they eat just like me. I love it. This is my kind of place, and these are my kind of people. Because remember, he is a dog. Dogs don't necessarily have good table manners. So when he sees other people eating like this, he connects with them and thinks, hey, they're just like me. Smiling, Long Bill made his way past George, who sat with a great big cloth napkin tucked into the neck of his shirt, eagerly awaiting his noontime feast. Suddenly, Long Bill stopped in his tracks. His keen hearing detected something hitting the floor. With a slight turn of his head, he spotted it, a wayward piece of biscuit. He scooted under a chair to his right, and in one gulp, that biscuit was history. Trotting onto the counter, Long Bill jumped up on a nearby chair, climbed onto the end stool, then walked across the row of stools. He planted his tail on the one next to Tom. Did I miss anything? Long Bill asked Tom, as the piano player in the corner started to play his next number. Oh, my darling, de Clementine is the name of the song. Long Bill moved his head and looked closer at his friend. Tom had a worried look on his face. Get ready for that simile, friends. He was wriggling in his stool like a cow jumping over the hot coals of a campfire. What's wrong, Tom? You look as if you sat in a big old pile of sagebrush. Did anyone catch that simile? Give me a 1. Give me a 1 in the chat if you guys heard that simile. Because remember, our question was, what simile does Long Bill use? Yeah, Emiliano heard it. And someone said moo, because that has to do with the simile. Let me read the sentence one more time, and then we could try and type in the chat, what are the 2 things we're comparing? So we're going to be comparing our friend Tom, and what are we comparing Tom to? So let me read it one more time. Long Bill moved his head and looked closer at his friend Tom. He had a worried look on his face. He was wriggling on his stool like a cow jumping over the hot coals of a campfire. So obviously, he's wiggling in his seat. Because remember, he's so nervous because he's going to be talking to Mame and potentially asking her out, maybe even to marry him. I don't know. But he is very nervous, and that's why he's wriggling in his seat. Kind of like a cow would if he was walking over hot coals, right? So there's our simile number 1. So as we get ready to continue reading, we're going to start thinking, who walks up into Mames that makes Long Bill's hair stand up? Oh, there it is. Who walks in and is going to upset Long Bill and make his hair stand up? Let's figure it out. Tom's eyes darted around nervously as he checked and rechecked his pockets. I lost my lucky silver dollar. Remember, that was the whole reason he felt confident enough to ask Mame out, right? He found this lucky silver dollar, and he's like, today's my lucky day. I'm going to ask her out. We're going to live happily ever after. So the fact that now this is gone, does he feel as lucky? All right, let's find out. Long Bill put a paw on the counter. That's too bad, Tom. He wondered what Tom's next move with Mame would be. Just then, Mame Dugan, the lovely young red-haired, dark-eyed owner of the restaurant, pushed her way out of the swinging doors that led from the kitchen. Small pearl earrings dangled from her ears, swaying gently as she rushed off to deliver the plates of food that loaded down her arms. Her long skirt swishing as she went, she nodded to Tom and Long Bill in passing. I'll be right with you, boys. Judging by the look on his face, Tom seemed to calm down a bit, but his foot started wriggling. Uh-oh, we're going to stop there. Wriggling. How do you spell the word wriggling? I'll give you a hint. There is a silent letter at the beginning, and it is a W. There is a silent W on the word wriggling. Other than that silent W, it's just as it sounds. Wriggling. First person to type in the chat below gets a high five virtually from Mr. Smith. How do you spell the word wriggling? It means to dang. I said wriggling. He's currently doing it. That's Wrigley. Rigging Lee. Wriggle. It's not a person's name, Evan. It's not someone's name. His foot was wriggling. Oh, I'll give it to my friend Emiliano. He got it. Wriggling. Way to go, Emiliano. My friend Anthony got it as well. So it's wriggling, not wriggling Lee. Diego, if he was currently doing it, it would be an adverb, so it would have that ly. Wriggling. Yeah, so it's a weird word. You don't really hear it too often. But if something is dangling and moving back and forth, wriggling is how you would say it. And it is spelled, once again, like that. Okay? Continuing on. So, Long Bill, you know why I like her, don't you? Because she's a good cook? Long Bill asked. His hind paw was digging at a flea behind his neck. Tom shook his head and let his glance follow Mame around the room. The corners of his mouth turned up just a bit in a bit of a smile. It's 'cause she's so full of life and self-confidence. He lowered his voice as Mame worked her way back toward them. She's tough, Bill, and beautiful. Those are fine qualities, Bill thought. If she had 2 more legs and a tail, I might be sweet on her myself. Mame has always looked life straight in the eye. Long Bill's words trailed off as Mame delivered the last plate of food and then came over to the counter. She looked at Tom with a tired gaze in her eyes. Now, what can I get you, honey? Tom shifted in his seat, but he didn't say a word. I think he's a little bit shy. He just kept staring across at Mame with his big brown eyes. He looked as if he were a pup waiting to be picked from the litter and taken home. Long Bill moved his head and looked at his friend. An arrow from Cupid sure can make a fellow act powerfully funny, he thought. I'd better see if I could bring him around before Mame gets thinking his head has been hollowed out like a pumpkin. He placed a paw on the counter. What's the matter, Tom? Cat got your tongue? He joked. When Tom didn't respond, Long Bill drew Mame's attention to himself. Well, I think I'll have the meatloaf with mashed potatoes and gravy. fried chicken and black-eyed peas? Can I have a turkey pot pie and a big old steak smothered in onions? I'm eating on the light side today. That banker's got me a mite bit nervous. Ooh, I see another word. How about the word smothered? So that means it is just covered in onions. We got a steak that just has pounds and pounds of onions, just giving it all that flavor. How do you spell the word smothered? Smothered. Past tense. Smothered with onions. Our friend Paul. Take it off of my friend Paul Pensavenes and then make it past tense, Daryl and Diego. Because he's got the right present tense. And he forgot the H. That's mothered. Don't forget that O instead of a U, Diego. There we go, Lyric. Nicely done. High five for Lyric. Smothered it is. Nicely done. No, you had it right the first time. Oh, there's my friend. Is that you, Janelle? Nice. Yeah, she swooped in there to get it too. You're not shocked. Calm down, Daryl. Oh my goodness. All right, so smothered once again means completely covered. If you like carne asada fries, you don't want them to go light on cheese. You want it smothered in cheese, right? So smothered means completely covered, not missing one spot. All right, so he likes his steak smothered in onions. He continues to say, I'm eating on the light side today. That banker's got me a mite bit nervous. Remember, the banker, Mr. Todd, is checking in on our friend Longbill, making sure that he's running his bank carefully and not making any mistakes. And we'll actually hear back from him in a little bit. Is that all you want to eat? Mame raised her eyebrows. We're also running a special on lamb stew, you know. Oh boy, Longbill got so excited he wagged his tail. Bring it on, man. And could you throw in half a dozen biscuits? I've always been mighty partial to biscuits. They remind me of my trail riding days. Sure, Bill, Mame said with a nod. Then she turned toward Tom, a bit impatient. Now, what about you, Tom? I'll just have the same as Bill, he mumbled. Mame Duggan shook her head. Are you sure that's enough for a big, strong man like you, Tom? Well, that did it for Tom. His face lit up like one of those gas lamps used in the cities to light the streets at night. He sat taller and puffed out his chest. As Meme disappeared into the kitchen, Tom turned to Longbill and grinned from ear to ear. Did you hear that, Longbill? She thinks I'm strong. And did you see the way she smiled at me, Bill? Shucks. I reckon I'll go forward with my plan, even without my lucky dollar. So remember, his plan was to ask her out on a date, maybe even get married. I don't know his extent, but he's definitely interested in pursuing Mame Duggan. When the swinging doors behind them squeaked open and swooshed shut, Tom and Longbill turned and looked. Standing just inside the doorway was the unshaven, scruffy, ill-mannered Calliope Catesby. Oh, and before I continue, there was a picture of them sitting at the bar stool that I forgot to show you guys. There we go. The fur on Longbill's neck bristled. He sensed just by looking at Calliope that the man was about to be as kind as a cat with his claws out. So we have our answer to number 2. Go ahead and type in the answer for number 2. Who was it who just came in that made Longbill's hair stand up on end? Yes, Anthony sees the answer to number 2. And for our friends wondering how to spell it, Calliope is spelled Calliope. Calliope. He's this character we saw before. He was mentioned and kind of said to have kicked a dog without apologizing. So Um, yeah, Calliope. It's kind of a weird spelling, but yes, Calliope is this gentleman who's kind of roughneck. No one really likes him a whole lot. So let's see what happens now that he's coming to the restaurant. Calliope looked about as kind as a cat with his claws out, which usually isn't very kind. Sizing up the place, Calliope made his way through the noonday diners. He slowed down behind George, the owner of the general store. He gave George a couple of hefty pats on the shoulder. Well, well, if it isn't our local seller of goods, both fine and general, he said in a sarcastic tone. Sarcastic, meaning he didn't really believe what he was saying. He was kind of joking. Watch it, George, Longbill thought to himself. Calliope's hoping to find someone to pick a bone with. When George ignored Calliope, the cowpoke moved on to Daniel Lawson, a cowboy stuffing his face with Mame's biscuits and gravy. Every time he shoved a big piece in, a bunch of little pieces fell out. Longbill wanted to leap down and lap the crumbs off the floor, but he decided to squash his hunger pangs until his main courses arrived. Calliope held out a hand to point at Daniel. And here is a living example of local knowledge and fine social manners. Your mother must be very proud, he sneered, showing his crooked teeth, and then stepped toward the counter. Longbill exchanged glances with Tom as Calliope walked closer. With a whoomp, Calliope sat on the stool next to Longbill. He gave a slight nod. Bill, he hadn't washed in a few days, Bill could tell. His teeth were yellow, and his hat was dirty, and even his vest and neckerchief were stained with sweat. Ooh. Longbill knew Calliope was forcing himself to be polite. He sensed a restlessness about the man. With one quick wag of his tail, Longbill returned the greeting. Hello, Calliope. Then, without a hint of a smile between them, Tom and Calliope exchanged nods. Just then, Mame returned from the kitchen, and Calliope gave her his full attention. Well, howdy, Mame. Howdy, Calliope. What can I get you? She poured coffee for him and Tom. When Longbill nudged his cup with his nose, Mame grabbed a jug from the counter behind her. She poured Longbill some water. No caffeine for Longbill. It would prevent him from taking his mid-afternoon snoozes. Smiling, Calliope turned on the charm. I know whatever you have is the best there is, Mame. I reckon I'll just have the usual. Mame spun on her heels. I'll be back before your stomach growls, she said, breezing toward the kitchen. When one of the cowboys at a table behind them let out a burp loud enough to rattle the windows, Calliope turned and scowled. We'll go and stop there. And I want to hear, how do you spell the word scowled as I give you a nice scowl? Type in the text. How do you spell scowled? Scowling means to give a dirty, kind of mean look. Ooh, that's scaled, Paul/Anthony. Scowled. So we hear that ow sound in there, and I can tell you right now it's going to be an O-W. It's going to be an O-W in the word scowled. Ow. So we have the S-C. We have the S-C correct, but now think of that. Scowled. It also has the word owl in it. Oh, my friend Lyric got it. Emiliano, high fives. High fives to you too. Everyone participating. But yes, S-O-W-L-E-D, scowled is correct. Only one L. Diego, be careful on that one. We don't need the doubled L on that because and there's no A in it as well, Anthony. Good job, friends. All right, continuing. Quickly, Longbill tried to divert Calliope's attention and ward off trouble. So, Calliope, I saw you loading sacks of cattle feed onto a freight wagon earlier. Yeah, Calliope pushed up his sleeves. And I suppose you want to make something of it, Longbill. So much for my idea of trying to keep Calliope from losing his temper, Longbill thought. Then he licked his whiskers. You're barking up the wrong tree, Calliope. I was just making polite conversation, that's all. Well, Calliope said, picking up his cup and squinting at Longbill, I don't need you rubbing my nose in the difference between our financial situations. Tom twisted on his stool. For crying out loud, Calliope, nobody's rubbing your nose in nothing. Nobody cares a hoot about your money matters. Mame backed her way through the kitchen doors, turned, then set heaping plates down before Tom, Longbill, and Calliope. This'll get you boys started. As she refilled their cups, Tom and Calliope tucked cloth napkins into their shirt collars, which you should always do. Whenever you're eating at a restaurant, I know nowadays we're not able to go to the restaurants, but next time you go to the restaurant, get that napkin, just kind of tuck it in that shirt collar, make it look nice and fancy, and you don't spill anything on your shirt. Okay? Something you should be doing. Continuing. Longbill thought about tucking a napkin into his collar. Nah, he decided. Tom smiled his thanks to Mame, while Longbill dug into the mashed potatoes and gravy. Mm-hmm. He licked his lips and his nose so he wouldn't waste a drop. Thank you kindly, Mame. Calliope was talking pecan pie sweet again. Mame, I wonder if you'd do me the honor of joining me on a sunset ride this evening. He slurped his hot coffee. A shower of dribbles fell from his lips to his plate. Longbill stared over his furred shoulder at Calliope. The way he's been slobbering, it looks as if he has bulldog blood running through his veins. He says that because bulldogs have the big slothy face and they're known to drool a whole lot. So he's saying he's drooling like a bulldog, kind of making fun of him at the same time. And as we can see, he is kind of drooling a little bit as he's eating, right? His food's falling off his face. And Mame doesn't really look like she's interested, does she? Not too much. We'll see why here in a second. And as we do, we should get ready for number 3, which is, what is Mame's response to Calliope? So it sounds like Calliope is asking her out on a date to go see the sunset. Let's see how she responds. All right, here we go. Calliope didn't bother to wipe his face. He just kept right on talking to May. Well, I reckon you'll never see such a sunset as the one you'll see from sitting atop my trusty steed, Apricot. Tom had stopped in mid-chew, his mouth closed. He was glaring at Calliope. Longbill kept right on lapping up his food. With a sigh and a forced smile, Mame finally spoke. Calliope, I like you as well as I like any of them fellows around here, but there isn't a man in the world I'd ever spend my time with, and there never will be. Whoa, what? So we have our answer to number 3. We have our answer to number 3. Boop, boop. What is her response? She definitely has no interest not only in him, but all men, it seems. It seems like she's happy just being a single lady. Good for her, right? Let's see where this continues. Because obviously Tom's not going to like the fact that Calliope is trying to talk to the woman he has such strong feelings for. Longbill said, maybe you just haven't met the right fellow yet, Mame. Do you know what a man is in my eyes? Mame glared from Longbill to Calliope, then looked at Tom. Tom shook his head slowly. Poor Tom, Longbill thought. He looks as confused as a hibernating rattler waking up in a snowstorm. He's a tomb. Mame planted her hands firmly on her hips. He's a big hollow chamber just waiting to fill himself up with beefsteak, pork chops, liver and onions, bacon, ham, and eggs. He's that and nothing more. She shook her head in irritation. For 2 years, I've watched men eat, eat. Now they represent nothing on earth to me but two-legged, cud-chewing critters. Longbill wagged his tail. Sounds like my kind of folks. It also sounds as if someone got up on the wrong side of the bedroll. Calliope shoved half a biscuit into his mouth. Well, a man's got to eat, don't he? A look of disgust bloomed on Mame's face as she watched Calliope run his food-covered tongue across his ugly teeth. A man, a sausage grinder, and a sack of flour awakened in me exactly the same feelings. So she's compared a man, a sausage grinder, which is you put sausage in it and it grinds into the little tubes, and a sack of flour. She has the same feeling for those three items. So that's not a good sign for either Calliope or our friend Tom. She has feelings comparing Tom to a sack of flour. Not a good sign. Calliope frowned. But Mame, no, Calliope, she cut him off. I'll spend time with no man and see him sit at the breakfast table and eat. Her voice rose. And come back to eat lunch. And stomp in again at supper time to just eat. I knew there was some reason I was never This is back to Longbill. I knew there was some reason I was never interested in Mame, Longbill muttered, lapping up the last of his steak. But poor Tom, he thought, glancing at the bewildered look on his friend's face. And that is the end of chapter 5. Whew. So where we stand, our friend Tom, it's looking like he's probably going to have his heart broken. I'm not going to lie. He's looking like he has a lot of hurdles ahead of him. Now, our next big issue is going to be Calliope and then also Mr. Todd and whether or not he can get things ready in time for that loan that he has to. So let's move on straight to chapter 6. And Daryl, if you're going to be talking about Fortnite, I'm just going to kick you out now. So we're only here to talk about Wishbone Dog Days, bro. Keep it on topic. All right, chapter 6. From his stool in Mame Dugan's restaurant, Longbill sensed that Tom was about to say something about Mame calling men cud-chewing critters. Tom cleared his throat and spoke quiet-like. But Mame, don't girls ever... No, they don't. Mame planted her hands on the edge of the counter and fixed her glare on Tom. Girls eat politely. They nibble a little bit, and they use real manners. And I can attest to this, because I remember breakfast and lunch, and I know who was messy eaters. The boys. Excuse me. And I know who the messy eaters were. Okay. Anyways, the boys are messier. The corners of Tom's mouth turned up a little bit and his eyes bright. But I thought when you put sweets in front of a girl, for goodness sake, Tom, Mame interrupted, change the subject. She spun around and stormed into the kitchen. Tom jumped off the stool, whipped the napkin from his collar and glared at Calliope. His face turned the same shade of red as her handkerchief. My bad, I got ahead of myself. We got some questions about chapter 6. Chapter 6 questions. Number 1, down here. What did Tom's and Calliope's fight lead to? Uh-oh. We're kind of spoiler alerting it, but they get into some kind of kerfuffle, some sort of fight, and it ends up leading to something. We'll need to figure out what that is. Number 2, why did everyone stop? So it led this. Everyone had to stop because something happened. We'll need to figure out what that is. And number 3 says, what 2 rules did Longbill break for Tom? So later in the chapter, we'll figure out that Longbill might have broke some rules for his friend Tom. And we're going to need to figure out what those 2 rules are. All right. So as we continue to read, first one we're looking for is, what did Tom and Calliope's fight lead to? So obviously, it sounds like they're going to get in a bit of a fight. Calliope rose from his stool and faced Tom with fire in his eye. Oh, wait. Sorry, I skipped a little bit. Look at you, Calliope. Ain't no woman ever going to be interested in you anyhow. And now you've gone and made Mame jump to conclusions about all men. Calliope rose from his stool and faced Tom with fire in his eyes. Them's fighting words, Tom. Uh-oh. With all the snarling and growling that are going on, it looks as if there's going to be a fight. Longbill jumped up onto the counter and braced himself on all fours. Now hold on a minute, man. There's no sense in fighting over a woman when all we got is this good food sitting here getting cold. Remember, Longbill and all dogs have food on their mind at all times. He nudged Tom's plate with his nose. But Tom's eyes were locked onto Calliope's. It seemed neither man cared beans about what Longbill had to say. Hello? Longbill paced across the counter on all fours. Tom stood taller and puffed out his chest. This town ain't big enough for the both of us, Calliope. I got as much right to live here as you do. Calliope jutted out his dripping chin. Just because you got more money than me doesn't mean you could tell me what to do. Reaching out with one hand, Tom pushed Calliope's right shoulder. Is that a fact? He scowled. Oh, there's that word scowled again. Calliope stepped closer and returned Tom's push. Yeah, so now they're starting to push each other. This is never a good sign. Uh-oh. Longbill lowered his ears as Tom reached over, yanked the napkin from the neck of Calliope's shirt, and threw it on the floor. Oh, yeah? Tom asked, raising his voice in anger. Yeah, Calliope answered back, just as angry. The two men grabbed each other by their shirt fronts and began the tussle. So they're grabbing each other by the shirts and kind of... Easy there, fellas. Longbill moved his head as he watched the two men push and pull each other in a circle. Finally, Calliope planted his feet firmly on the floor, and with a grunt and a groan, he picked Tom up and heaved him across the room. Hey! Tom crashed into Mame's arm just as she stepped from the kitchen carrying platefuls of food. The food, the dishes, and Tom crashed to the floor. Mame glared down at Tom. Tom dug potatoes out of his neckerchief and pulled himself up to his feet. I'm sorry, Mame. Fuming, Mame turned away without saying a word. Longbill caught a glimpse of her face. It was as red as cherry pie. Mame flung open the swinging doors, and with a swish of her full skirt, she stomped back into the kitchen. Across the room, George stood up and stretched his neck for a few of the spilled food. Hey, that's my meal, he complained. Tom frowned at Calliope. Now look at what you've done. Calliope pushed back his hat and grinned. It looks like lunch is on Tom. That's what we call dad joke, because the food's all over Tom because he fell over and he's saying lunch is on him. Yeah. And I think that puts you both in Mame's doghouse. Longbill barked. Palm scooped up a big bag. A big bag. I'm in the middle of my video. What's up?
Oh, okay. Goodbye.
Sorry about that. This puts you both in Mame's doghouse. Doghouse. So doghouse meaning they're both in trouble with Mame. She's really not liking them both right now. If you're in someone's doghouse, they're not on good terms with you. Tom scooped up a big wad of mashed potatoes from a nearby plate and threw it at Calliope, and it hit him square in the face. I can't see, Calliope bellowed, turning in a circle. And immediately, Tom put his boot to Calliope's rear and gave it a big old push, knocking him into George. George went sprawling across the table full of food. Hey, said one of the unhappy diners, picking up a biscuit and throwing it at Tom. Tom ducked, and the biscuit hit another person. Scowling, that person scooped up a handful of stew and threw it back. Another cowboy threw a chicken leg and a hunk of apple pie. So what's happening? We have ourselves a good old-fashioned food food fight. And as you can see from our picture, it is getting pretty messy. Everyone inside is throwing something at someone else. Yes, Calliope. He's a complicated character, Janelle. Okay, he's not necessarily dumb. He's got his own problems. He got bodied. No one got bodied. They got hit by food, Brenton. No one got touched by a body, so they couldn't get bodied. Oh, dear. Pretty soon, every diner in the place, except Longbill, was throwing food. So many globs of mashed potatoes were sailing through the air that it was beginning to look like an indoor hailstorm. Longbill watched the piano player slip down and hide under the table, while he kept his fingers pressed to the keys to make music. So he's still playing music. Good for him. Longbill waited until all was clear. Then he stood tall. Hey, everybody, can't we just talk about this like civilized humans? But then he dodged a high-flying hunk of meatloaf. Never mind, he said. Dropping into his belly, he pressed himself to the hard counter. Mame stormed out of the kitchen, a shotgun in her hands. That's enough! But no one paid her any attention. She ducked as a round of cheese flew past her ear. She then pointed the barrel of the shotgun upward, and Mame fired into the air. Boom! Instantly, the men froze. Longbill looked around at the mess. Then he licked a glob of potatoes from the fur on his front leg. Letting all this good food go to waste is criminal, I tell you. And all at once, almost every man in the place raced, slipping and sliding, toward the exit. The swinging doors burst open as men, covered from head to toe with food, flew outside to avoid Mame's anger. Longbill trotted under the doors and sat on the wooden boardwalk. There's no sense in my waiting around to see if her bite is worse than her bark. Calliope staggered outside and stumbled past Longbill. At the edge of the boardwalk, he tripped on the first step and fell down the next two. He bumped smack into J. Edgar Todd. For our friends who are new to the story, J. Edgar Todd is a bank owner from the East, which is kind of looked down upon by these people in this town as being uppity, kind of a group of people who are dressed fancy and not used to the country life that the people in this town are used to. Oh no, he's back, Longbill thought, as he watched J. Edgar Todd scowl, once again, a lot of scowling going on, and move out of Calliope's way. Calliope lost his balance again, and with a splash, he fell into the rectangular trough that the horses drank from. And as quickly as he went down, he came bobbing up. And then he climbed out and shook himself like a wet dog, spraying water everywhere. A shocked look came over J. Edgar Todd's face as he stepped back and wiped the water spots from his elegant business suit. Because remember, he's dressed super fancy. Hey, Calliope is right smart sometimes, Longbill wagged his tail as he looked at the bank examiner. As Calliope wandered off, Longbill turned to Mr. Todd. Oh. So we forgot the answer too. Why did everyone stop? So in the middle of their food fight, why did they all stop? What caused them to stop? Go ahead and type it in the chat below. They were in the middle of this huge food fight. What caused them to stop? Why did everyone stop throwing food? What was it that happened that caused them to freeze and book it out of the room? What happened? Type it in the comments below. I'm going to get some water when I come right back. So if she did it in the past, it would be only 1-0. She shot. Nicely done. I'll be right back. I'm getting some water. Sorry. All that reading's got me thirsty. But yes, it was our friend Mame shooting the shotgun blast into the sky. I don't know about you, but someone busts out a shotgun and shoots it in the roof, I'm probably taking off too. That's enough to scare me and to stop me from continuing my food fight. Anthony, if you don't like what's going on, just leave. No one likes a negative Nancy. All right, so the last question we're looking for is, what are the 2 rules that Longbill broke in order to help our friend Tom? And that's going to be coming up soon as he talks to our friend, Mr. Todd. All right, here we go. As Calliope walked off, Longbill turned to Mr. Todd. Before he could speak, the doors to the restaurant flew open again. Tom stepped out with his hat in his hand. And covered with food, he sat down on the top step of the boardwalk and swiped at his face, brushing mashed potatoes from his eyebrows. Then suddenly, the restaurant doors exploded open as if they had been charged with a stick of dynamite. Mame, one hand on her hip and the other holding a shotgun, suddenly stood on the boardwalk. She glared at the men with disgust. "If any of you ever behaves that way again in my establishment," she warned, "well, I'll just have to raise my prices." She did an about face, pushed through the doors, and stomped out of sight. Ooh, we got another spelling word for you. Establishment. Establishment. Establishment, meaning a business or place of gathering or somewhere you could buy goods. And spell the word establishment. Establishment. Anthony with the win. Anyone else thinks they have it? Establishment. 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 Exactly as it sounds. ESS, tab, TAB, lish, LISH, mint, MENT. And once again, that means a business or okay, the high five. Yeah, you got the correct answer. Nicely done, Anthony. One for my friend Brenton, and Lyric get some high fives too. Fist bumps. Birds flying away. All right, we get it all. Wait, we have spelling words? I'm stopping and occasionally asking you how to spell some words that I'm reading. So not technically spelling words, but yes, some sort of spelling. Food fight. Yeah, Dario, you're a little late on that one. We talked about the food fight already. Good job, Brenton. Way to go. All right, let's keep going. Longbill noticed. When do we have school? Well, Emiliano, we'll talk about that some more on Class Dojo some more, and maybe at the end of this video I'll talk about it. But as it's looking, we're going to be doing some video conferencing. So you will be able to do videos kind of like this, but we'll make it so where I could see you guys and you'll be able to see me. So that's kind of our next plan. And I'll be talking to you and your parents a little bit more about that in the coming days. But yeah, also continuing to go on Clever and doing ST Math, as well as the Envision assignments that I signed on there as well. I need spelling. Okay. Yeah, on Zoom, we're going to use Zoom as well. I need spelling. That's my friend. Who is that? Who's David Thomas? Is that my friend? I know who that is. Let me check. Who is that? Who says, is that you? No, is that my friend? It's Tiana. There she is. Okay, Tiana, yes. even Anthony knows. Yes, Tiana. We'll make sure we get spelling going out as well. Once next week is technically spring break, so I'm gonna let you guys have that week off. But once we come back, We're going to make sure that we have spelling and math and all the things we normally do. Okay? All right, but back to our book. I want to make sure we finish this chapter. Long Bill noticed a stream of gravy running down the door frame. He went over to it, and with a few quick swipes from his tongue, he made the gravy disappear. Don't worry, Mame. I'll bring some of my friends by later, and they could lick the place clean. He chuckled. Turning, he then faced Mr. Todd. My dear Mr. Longley, has there been some sort of trouble? Mr. Todd peered through his spectacles. Long Bill sat down next to Tom. Oh, just another dog day in Chomperosa. I see. Well, there's this matter with the books. J. Edgar Tad tapped the ledger he was carrying under his arm. Oh, yes, the books. Long Bill scratched his spotted ear. Is there any problems? Well, everything is in order except for a loan of $10,000 made to a Mr. Tom Merwin. He held up his finger. Now, you violated 2 national banking laws. Ding, 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 ding. Pause right there. Because as you can see, what are the 2 laws that we break? Okay. So let's listen up, see if we can hear what are those 2 laws he just broke by helping out his friend Tom and giving him $10,000. Establishment, Daryl. Establishment. 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 All right, I know we haven't said it yet, Emilion. Let's keep listening. Oh, yes, the books. Long Bill scratches here. Long Bill jumped up on all fours after hearing that he'd broken 2 laws. Now, hold on a cotton-picking minute. Tipping his head, J. Edgar Todd peered over his glasses at Long Bill and ignored his words. First, you're not allowed to loan such a large sum of money to just one person. Second, you made a loan with no collateral, nothing to hold against the loan. So that's what collateral is. Meaning, if you get a loan, you need to be able to put something up just in case you're not able to pay for that loan. So earlier, when we talked about Tom and giving him that loan, they mentioned that usually they put a house up for collateral. So if you don't pay the loan back, the bank ends up owning your home. So he didn't do that with Tom, and that is one of the rules he broke. Therefore, you have no guarantee that this loan will be repaid. Raising his eyebrows, he shook his head slowly. You're in a very serious position, Mr. Longley. The government has a right to take you to trial for ignoring important banking laws. Holy moly. So, what Mr. Todd is saying is they could actually take Long Bill to court and put him in jail because he didn't abide by those 2 laws. Those 2 laws, once again, are 1. You're not allowed to give that large amount of money, $10,000, to just one person. Most of the time, it's to a company or a business that is spread out over multiple people. Second being, he didn't take any collateral. He didn't take any physical objects or any property that could be used just in case he doesn't pay for a loan. And we'll hear about why he didn't do those things. Take me to trial? Long Bill didn't like the ha-ha, I got you look on J. Edgar's face. Now look here just a minute, Mr. Todd. This here's Tom Merwin right next to me. Long Bill looked at Tom as he started digging mashed potatoes out of his ear. I don't know about you, but if someone was telling me, hey, I don't think you're doing a good job by lending this guy money, and then you point to that guy, and he has mashed potatoes all over his head and in his ears, probably not the best look. Doesn't look like he's ready to pay back money if you've got mashed potatoes in your ear. Tom flung the potatoes from his finger. With a smile, he offered Mr. Todd his hand. Howdy. Eyeing Tom's crusty hand, Mr. Todd shrank back, a disgusted look on his face. Why, he's looking at Tom as if he's a cow pie. Long Bill growled to himself. I made that loan to Tom on his word, and I've always found that when a man's word is good, it's the best security there is. And there's a picture of
Tom, Mr. Edgar Todd, and Long Bill sitting on the porch. He's kind of waggling his finger like, you can't trust him to pay back this loan. Tom nodded. That's right, and my word is as good as a law-abiding official contract. Mr. Todd's fingers started tapping impatiently against the ledger he was holding. See, Long Bill said, his tail starting to wag. Tom heard about 2,000 head of cattle that could be bought for $8 a head. Cattle I knew could be sold in Kansas City for $15 a piece. Tom continued, picking food off himself. Mr. Todd tipped his hat and grinned. Be that as it may, Long Bill jumped up to a water barrel and sat on his haunches. His brother Ed took the cattle on the market about 3 weeks ago. He ought to be back any day now with enough money to pay that note, and a whole lot more. That's right. Tom gave a quick nod of his head. That's the plain fact of the matter. And I think that makes good business sense, don't you? Long Bill hoped he'd convince Mr. Todd to stop acting like a dog with the biggest bone. J. Edgar Todd glanced at Tom, who still had a powerful amount of food plastered on him, and he grimaced. Grimaced! We have another word that describes a facial expression you can make. A grimace means, you're not really liking how, something went, Maybe you notice someone get really hurt and you go, you grimace. How do I spell the word grimaced? Past tense, meaning I did it in the past. Grimaced. Definitely has the word grim in it. Grimaced. That's Grimes, that first one, and that's grimace. Grimaced. Oh, we're using the word mist, Emiliano. Good guess. But the way it's spelled, the pronunciation of it is grim-maced. Grim-maced is how it's actually spelled. Grim-maced. Grimaced. Just like that. Grimaced. Grimaced. That's grimasted. Grimasted. Grimaced is how I put it. Grimaced. To grimace. To look is something. Is no high five for Mr. Smith on that one. That was a tough one though. Grimace, not a word we usually see. However, for those of you who are big McDonald's fans, the purple character is named Grimace. Why? I do not know. This is hard bonus words. Emiliano, that was a tough one. But it's a word we need to know. Finally, Mr. Todd gave all his attention to Longbill. Well, Mr. Longley, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to Hilldale tonight to examine a bank there. He took off his glasses, and with a cloth he took from his pocket, he wiped the dirt from the lenses. And I'll pass through Chaparosa on my way back home the day after tomorrow. Mr. Longley, you have until noon that day to pay back this loan. Otherwise, I'm afraid I'll have to do my duty. He set his glasses on his nose and hooked the wire stems over his ears. Then, with the tip of his derby, he marched off. City slickers. Tom sat there shaking his head in disbelief. Longbill stood up on all fours and shook his nose to tail. Things sure are done differently back east, he said, wondering how he could solve this problem in less than 48 hours. First, Tom loses his lucky silver dollar. Then he finds out Maine doesn't cotton to being quartered. Then the day isn't turning out the way he'd expected it would. And cutting to what's going to happen next, when we're talking back into reality, will Wanda's interview with Mitch McCain live up to what she expects? Or does Mr. McCain have a few twists waiting that will send her spinning? So, as we continue on Chapter 7, next time we read, we're going to be going back to Wishbone, talking about the interview that's going on between Wanda and Mitch McCain. Now, remember, just like Calliope, this Mitch McCain character is kind of giving off bad vibes, not only to Wishbone, but also other characters. Remember, Melanie doesn't think he's too grand of a character. Now, before we call it a day, we got two things we need to cover Thank you, friends, for sticking with me in those 2 chapters. I'm a little parched. I'm going to drink a little bit more water. Reading for an hour straight takes a lot out of you. So I've got my board here. We answered, those 2 rules he broke. 2 rules he broke. 1, can't give that amount of money to just one person. And 2, didn't have collateral. So we're going to erase this board of questions. And we're going to talk about decimals. Let's get it. More bonus words, please. Uh-oh. I'm in LA. Brenton, what you in LA for? There we go. Daryl, man. Yeah, you must not be watching live, Daryl, because, yeah, you are late. So, Emiliano, in order to get to Envision, you're going to log in the Clever like you normally do. Then, once you're in Clever, one of the tabs you're going to see is Power School. It's just a big, giant P. You're going to see it. Click on that. You're probably going to need to log in with your username and ID one more time. Then once you do that, you're going to see a list of things on your left-hand side. One of them is going to say Pearson Courses. Pearson Courses like this. Pearson Courses. Then you're going to click on that, and it'll have all the Envision stuff. And I already have the first lesson up for you guys, and I'm going to be posting new lessons each day. Okay. Oh, to see your dad, Brenton? Awesome. Well, I'm glad you're here for the read-along. I'll be posting more stuff. Keep checking up on Clever and Class Dojo. And ST Math, what is Zoom? So Zoom, Janelle, is a kind of like a video conferencing, kind of like this. So you're going to need, we might be able to use our phones or other computers that have a camera on it, and we'll be able to talk and communicate via video. So that should be pretty fun going forward. So let's get to some decimal stuff. I'm going to do a little bit of decimal review. And for those friends who stick around, I'll have some more drumming for you as well, okay? So we got to stick through these decimal stuff first before we get to the fun stuff. Alrighty, here we go. Things we need to remember for my friends. Yeah, it is a video conference, yes. So 2 different rules for decimals. And we're going to bracket it off into 2 different groups. Adding and subtracting. Things we have to do. Line up decimal points. That is the big thing we have to do when we are adding and subtracting with decimals. Line up those decimal points. For example, 2.416 plus 0.162. Even though I don't have a whole number right here, I still line up the decimals right with what we're just going to do a couple of practice problems. You don't need a pencil or a paper for this. We're just going to review a couple of things before we call it a day. So we are remembering when we are adding and subtracting decimals, line up those decimals. That is the first thing we need to do, and is the most important thing we need to do, because once those are lined up, it just becomes an addition problem. We could add that 6 and 2 that equal 8. 6 plus 1 is 7. 4 plus 1 is 5. Put that decimal place lined up with the other ones. And then 2 plus nothing is 2. Okay. Are we done yet? I'm hungry. Daryl, if you need to leave, go ahead and do so, but you're going to miss out on the drumming. So, so I wouldn't leave just yet. Same thing with subtracting those decimals. We need to line up those decimal points. Here's another example. 31.216 minus 3.413. Once again, my decimal points line up. They're exactly underneath each other. Nice. Emiliano, you're heading in decimals and ST Math. Perfect. So we're going to want to subtract these as well. Okay, make sure we need to borrow when we need to, since we're subtracting. 6 minus 3 gives me 3. 1 minus 1 equals 0. I can't take away 4 from 2, so I'm going to need to regroup. That 1 becomes a 0. I'm bringing over a group of 10. This 2 becomes 12. And now I have 12 minus 4, which I could easily do. Gives me 8. Make sure my decimals line up once again, all the way down. Now I have 0 minus 3. I can't do that, so I need to borrow. 3 becomes 2. Bring over 10. Oh, my goodness, Mr. Smith. That 0 becomes 10. Now I have 10 minus 3 equals 7. And 2 minus 0 equals 2. Making sure that that one big rule that I continue to follow when adding and subtracting decimals is line up the decimals. Biggest thing you could do, make sure you do it. And we're going to review the rules for multiplying and dividing as well real quick. So when you are multiplying, you add the total decimal places. So when you are multiplying with decimals, we'll underline that. Whoop. When multiplying, you add the total decimal places. Add them all together. So, for example, and lining them up doesn't really matter in this case. When it comes to multiplying and dividing, you do not need to worry about lining them up. Notice how my decimal places do not line up, in fact. If you're a fan of partial products, you can multiply the 3/10 times 1/100th. Or you could do as I do and ignore the decimals and then bring them in at the end. So if you're multiplying here, you would have 3 times 1 is 3. You would have 3 times 3 is 9. And you would have 3 times 1 is 3. So now I need to figure out where the decimal place goes. So I need to follow this rule. Add the total decimal places. So if I look over here, there is 2 places on that top number and 1 on this bottom number. So that's 1, 2, 3 decimal places that my answer needs to have. So I go to my answer and I count over 1, 2, 3 places, and I put in my decimal. So my answer becomes 393 thousandths, or 0.393, however you wish to pronounce it. Remember, when we're multiplying, we add those decimal places. And that makes sense, right? Because when we think of multiplication, 3 times 3, multiplication is just repeated addition. That's equal to 3 plus 3 plus 3. So when we're thinking of decimals and multiplying, we just need to remember that's like repeated adding of those decimal points. Okay? All right. And last but certainly not least, we're going to talk about dividing in those decimal places. Oh man, that one's just not racing. Okay. I need some water for some of that. Division. Subtract. When we divide, we subtract the decimal places. We see how many is in our larger number, and then we subtract however many is in our smaller number. Yes, 393 thousandths is small. You are correct. That is, it's not even half, right? It's less than half. So if I have, let's say 1.44 divided by 1.2. So this is my division problem. Now, once again, I'm a big fan of kind of ignoring the decimal places until the very end and then plugging them in where I need them. But if you wish to divide it out accordingly, you may. So I'm going to set us up. 144 on the inside and 12 on the outside. Once again, I'm ignoring the decimal places until I get to my answer. Okay, so if I look at this, 12 goes into 1 0 times. It doesn't go into 1. So how much does it go into 14? 1 time. 1 times 12 is 12. I can subtract to see how much I have left over. 14 minus 12 is 2. I know 12 doesn't go in the 2, so I'll need to bring down my 4. And I have 24. 12 goes into 24 2 times. Now, my answer isn't 12 because I need to figure out how many decimal places I need. So what you do is you take how many decimal places are in your first number and then subtract how many are in the second one. So let's count and see. So this says 1, 2 decimal places. So we're going to take 2 and minus however many decimal places are over here, which is 1. So our decimal places are going to be 2 minus 1. So 1 decimal place for our answer. Oh, wrong, Anthony. Wrong. Because that's 2 decimal places. We only need 1, so we're going to go over 1 spot. And our answer is 1.2. Not 0. I don't know how we got 0, Emiliano. But yes, if we look, 1.44 has 2 decimal places. 1.2 has 1. So our answer is going to have 1 decimal place. 1.2 is our answer. Okay. So my 4th grade friends especially, I'm going to be posting new Envision material on decimals. So keep going on Power School and ST Math to practice that. My 5th grade friends, we're going to be working on measurement a lot more. So if you have questions with that, I'll continue to work on that with you. So we're at an hour and 11 minutes, friends. So I tip my hat to you if you've been here the entire time. And I'm going to reward you now with another drum show. Friends, before I get to the drums, I want to thank you for participating. I know these are some tough times. We're scared. We're not sure what things are going to be happening. But stay positive, stay learning, stay ready to adapt because we are going to continue school one way or another. Whether it's online this way or we are able to get in the classrooms, we are going to expect you guys to be participating and trying to learn. I'm going to be out there trying to teach to the best of my ability. So I appreciate everyone who's here. Once again, look forward to the next video I post. I'm going to be posting some new information. Anthony, get out of here. If you don't like the drums, get out of here. This guy. But to send you guys off, I'm going to play a little bit of drums for you. Wish you all the best. Friends, family, stay healthy, wash those hands. Social distancing 6 feet away. Until next time, friends, thank you very much and enjoy this couple minutes of drumming I got. Let's see how much energy Mr. Smith has. Ugh. There we go. Got to get set up. I'm sorry. All righty.
Until next time, friends, be safe, have a good one, and enjoy.